Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Stayntouch Product Enhancements, versions 5.69 through 5.72, add-on date range functionality, add-on bundles, and more, presented by Stayntouch Implementation Consultant Natasha Leck. I'm your host, Erin Fisher, the content writer here at Stayntouch. Today's presentation will cover how you can get the most out of the Stayntouch PMS versions 5.69 through 5.72 product releases. In this webinar, we will explain the add-on date range functionality, discuss bundle with price add-on changes for reservation creation, stay cards, and groups, show that you can now see the add-on price from the add-on section of a rate, show that you can now search for add-ons within the add-on section of a rate, discuss the display of room type names on the group room block details tab, demonstrate how to scroll through selected rates from the rate manager, highlight the addition of group reservation notes on the arrival report, departure report, and in-house guest report, discuss allotment shared notes, demonstrate allowance count on the stay card and guest bill, demonstrate the correct display of nationality and country fields via Stayntouch Guest Mobility and Stayntouch Guest Kiosk, illustrate that guest details now display after reservation details during Stayntouch Guest Kiosk check-in, illustrate that Geo settings have been moved to Settings Integrations BI, discuss updates to the Remote Lock Ideas G3 and TravelClick iHotelier integrations, cover new API integrations with Stayntouch PMS, discuss updates to Stayntouch Connect APIs, highlight Stayntouch IBE enhancements, which are applicable to Stayntouch IBE customers only, and explain the deposit invoice enhancements, which are applicable to specific customers using deposit invoices in Europe. We'll have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we'll answer them in the order they are received at the end. And that's all I have right now. Natasha, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Erin. All right, perfect. Let's dive right in. So I'm going to do it per release. So I'm going to start with 5.69. The first item that was mentioned is for Ideas G3 integration, which covers that hotels that have that specific integration can now upload group rates and group messages without tax and add-on revenue. This function does need to be enabled by us, so please contact customer support for that. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show that part yet, but just for you to know to contact us. The next item is something that I am able to show, is that it is now possible to exclude tourist tax from messages uploaded from Stayntouch to TravelClick iHotelier. We can see this when we go into our menu, and settings again. We move to integrations, central reservation systems, and then iHotelier. We scroll to the bottom, if this integration obviously applies to you. Over here on the right-hand side, we now have this toggle that you can toggle on or off, which is do not send tourist tax. This will exclude all taxes that are set up with the charge code type tourist tax. So when we go to our financials and our financial settings, we want to have the option for tourist tax toggled on, and then our charge code that we set up for this will have the charge code type that you see here, tourist tax. That is the one that will be excluded. The next topic is specifically for customers using the Stayntouch IBE. The following enhancements have been made. When there is a promo code, this can now be applied on the side of the search result page. So this is my demo environment. If I book here on the left-hand side, I am now able to add a promo or group code. And if I type that in from here and I say update, we can now see that the price shows strike through, which is the old amount, and then we'll also have that new amount over here. Furthermore, on this search result page, the upper banner image has been removed, and the sidebar here on the search result page remains visible while scrolling. So if I scroll through all these different options here, you'll see that the sidebar stays here on the left-hand side. The login process also has been improved. So when I try to check out, if I try to book any of the options and I say check out, if I now sign up, I don't have the option to choose, for example, Google anymore. But if I type in my email address and I say login, I'm now going to receive an email in my inbox with a login link. And then from there, if I move into my inbox, I'll receive the email. And then from here, I'll be able to log in and continue with my reservation. Another enhancement that is now possible is to set up the tourist tax or the destination fee, depends on how you'd like to name it, as a separate line item on the reservation summary screen. So when I am in my reservation summary, if I go to my price details, I now have the option to have my custom tax right under tax. You see custom tax. These can be named resort fee, tourist tax, destination fee, whatever you'd like. That can now display as a separate item over here. To activate this feature, please also contact our customer support. And then lastly, just as an FYI, whenever rates and descriptions are updated, this will now immediately update on the IBE as well. So from the PMS, any changes that are made there will reflect immediately on the IBE. The next topic is specifically for customers using the deposit invoice functionality in Europe. So let me move into my different environment. The deposit functionality, or deposit bill functionality, I should say, allows users to keep deposit transactions separate from normal financial transactions. This feature also has to be enabled by support. Once it is enabled, a new option will appear under our settings. Under financials, we'll now have the deposit invoice charge code setup option. First, a charge code needs to be created with the charge code type deposit. So we'll go into our charge codes. And we'll have our deposit charge code, where you can see that this has the charge code type deposit, and this is grayed out now. This is grayed out now because we're using it in that setup before. But this is the first step that needs to happen. We'll create a charge code, we'll link the corresponding taxes to it, and we'll assign it the charge code type deposit. Then we'll go back into deposit invoice charge code setup. And here we can select the charge code that is going to be used for our deposit invoice. Once this is linked, this will be the default charge code for deposits and cannot be used for anything else. So the way that this functionality will now work is, let me create a reservation. And what is important for this functionality is that we'll move into, once we're on the stay card, we'll move into the bill and charges screen. So here in our bill and charges screen, we can now see that we have our first deposit invoice over here. We have bill 1, which is still relating to the customer. And now if we go into the deposit invoice, we can post a deposit. Once we click on pay, I can post that amount. And then immediately you'll be able to see that the bill gets locked. So we're not able to make any changes to it. And now an invoice can be created. You can see here, this is the way that our deposit or this is our payment, and this is our deposit charge code that we have linked. And now when I create an invoice and I print this, I'm just going to open it up so we can see it a little bit better. You'll be able to see that on the invoice as well. Now, the other item that you'll note is that once this is locked, deposit 2 will open up. So anything that we do deposit-wise afterwards will have to be on that second bill. Once we check in the reservation, you will see when we move to the bill and charges screen that now the deposit charge has been moved at check-in with this specific text with that. So that happens automatically with the -50. So that can balance out correctly again once all the normal charges will be posted. And on our deposit, this will stay the same. So it doesn't get moved from the deposit invoice to the bill, but it will be a separate charge that gets put on here as the -50. Items to note with this is the void functionality. If that is something that you're working with, as you can see on this bill. Oh, we need to reverse to check-in for a moment. As we can see on this bill, the void bill functionality still exists, and this works per usual. As I mentioned, it is not possible to make adjustments to the posted charges. As you can see, the purple pencil is grayed out. I'm not able to do anything here, as the invoice is created at the time of posting the payment. Via the menu reports, and if we're going to look at our deposit balance summary report, you'll now see that we have this button here on the right side, which will give the option to also exclude deposit charges. Another last item to note on this functionality is that in the journal, once a reservation has checked in, let me check in my reservation again. Complete the check-in. From the menu, we move to financials and then journal. Once a reservation has checked in, the charges will be reversed on the deposit balance tab. So here we'll be able to see the postings according to the deposit invoice functionality. All right, so those were the items for 5.69. I'm continuing now with 5.70. If we move into our groups, let me go back to my property here. We have my webinar group for today. Under the room block details, if a name of the room is too long to display, as you can see here, if you now hover over this with your mouse, you can see the actual name of the room type. This only applies when the room type description is too long. As you can see here under double, this stays the same. If I hover over, nothing happens. This is only for when the display is too long. The next item is add-ons with date ranges. So let's dive in. If we go into our settings, rates, and then we have now the option for rate and add-on settings. We can toggle on this toggle over here, the option to enable add-on date range and sets. Once this is enabled, I can go into the add-ons. And create a new add-on. This is what we do recommend if you want to start working with date ranges. So let me create the webinar add-on with date range. Just going to set it up. Now we'll have to set it up first the way that we normally would set up our add-on. And once this is created, we'll save. Now we can go into the add-on. And then if we scroll to the bottom, we'll now see the option for date range. So let me add that date range here. So let's say this property is currently on the 1st of September, but then I can say, okay, for example, from the 2nd until the 5th, my price is, I put this price on 10, so my price is now going to be 20. And I save that date range. I'll set it for the 5th. All right. Let me do that from the 2nd to the 5th. Perfect. Now, if we go to create a reservation now, and we want to add our webinar add-on with date range, and I say add, you can see that this now says multiple because we don't only have the 10 euros, but we also have the 20 euro price. So if we continue with our reservation, a little bit more to the top. And I move into my stay card. When I click on the add-ons here on the right-hand side next to the rate, we can see here that we have the webinar add-on with date range. Oh, I've created it for, let me create that for 2 nights, or 3 nights even, so we can see the difference. There we go. So now we have our webinar add-on with date range. You can see here that we have 1 for 10 euros and we have 2 at a price of 20, and you even see the date range that comes with that. So you see here, this is for the 1st and this is for the 2nd to the 4th. You'll also be able to see this in the bill and charges under the packages. You'll be able to see here that we have our webinar add-on with date range for 1 and webinar date range at 20 euros. We have 2 for a price in total of 40. A couple of items to note here. If allowance is enabled for an add-on, date ranges won't be available. And also very important is not all CRSs support add-ons with different rates. So it is highly recommended to first verify with the CRS that you're working with if this is something that they will be able to support. The next item that is now also a little bit related to add-ons is the possibility to bundle add-ons with the room rates from multiple places. So you probably already noticed, if I try to create a reservation, a lot of reservations getting created today. I now have the option here to bundle with price. So if I say, okay, bundle with price and add, you'll see that this now says bundle with price. You're able to do that from the reservation creation flow, but you're also able to do that whenever you are in your reservation, like the one that we just created. When I go to add-ons, let me just remove all of these so it becomes a little bit more clear. Right. Add more to the room. Now I can say, okay, I want my bike to be included with my price, and I can add that from here. Now you can see bundled with price. You can do this for multiple. Maybe let me add the parking in there as well, bundle with price and add. You'll see here bundle with price. And the way that that will display is if I just check in this reservation. I print or I post all my charges. You'll see here that I have my add-on bundle. And if I open up with the orange arrows that you'll have through multiple places in Stayntouch, you'll see here that my bike and the parking that I've added have been part of that bundle. So this way it'll show as part of the room rate on the bill and charges screen. So you're able to do that from the reservation creation process, you're able to do it from the stay card, but you're also able to do this with group add-ons. So if I move into my webinar group and I go to add add-ons here on the right-hand side next to the rate, I also get the option to bundle with price. And this works the same way that it does on the reservation that I just shown you. All right, next topic. If hierarchy restrictions are enabled for the property you'll be able to see this from the menu, revenue, and rate manager. Let me just select a date range so that we can see the restrictions that we have. Here you can see I have my hierarchy restrictions on, and we now have this option and possibility that when a user clicks on rate, so this one over here, it is possible to see, when I click on the restriction, the different rates and scroll through these from here. And I'd be able to search for them as well. And then you're able to see all the rates that this restriction has been set on. All right. The next topic is relating to the kiosk. So I am just going to switch my screen. We now have, for expected functionality, the option that the nationality and country, in this case I have nationality as example, shows a country drop-down list. We do this for, as I said, nationality and country. This is to resolve an issue from before where this drop-down was not displaying. The next topic is relating to API or our API integrations. For our API integration, Stayntouch now includes guest card likes in our get guests and get guest ID API calls. Likes will only display if the data is actually present, of course, in Stayntouch. The next topic is relating to UYO. I hope I pronounced it correctly. What has changed for them is as they have changed from an RMS to a BI system, this integration can now be found in a different place. So if we now go back to our settings, integrations, and BI, we can now find them under here. So following 5.69, where I talked just now about the deposit invoice, we also now have this other item where if the deposit invoice is enabled, of course, for your property, the invoice itself can be configured from, let me just jump to the correct property. So if I move into my settings, hotel and staff and stationery, here at the bottom, we now have the option for deposit invoice. You have the option to also email the deposit invoice on creation. And here we can follow the normal way that we set up most of our invoices, which will be the email, subject, and body. And then we have the header and footer and invoice label for the actual invoice itself. All right, continuing with 5.71. I'm going to actually grab the release notes for that one because I would like to take this time to show you some of the new integrations that we have or new integration partners and that are displayed over here. So we have Daily Point, Central Data Management, Duve, Micrometrics, Enseo, HMA, Intelligent Marketing, Meta, Oki, but then the two-way integration. This integration was already there before, but this is now two-way. Sensoria and Verdi. All right, going back into my demo environment. For the next topic, this is relating to the group. So when there is a group with nodes, let me go into my group. And we're going to post a note in here. Ah, perfect. We already have that one. If I now go into my reports, and this is the case for arrival, in-house, as well as departure reports. If you include the option for your arrivals to also have reservation notes, so this is again for all three reports, and you run this report, if you go to the inbox, you'll now be able to see this one is part of my group. You'll see here the group note, which you'll see test note to display on reports. Very good note, so we exactly know which one we're looking for. Back to a little bit more of enhancements on add-ons. When I move into my settings and we're working on our rate setup and we're trying to add add-ons to our rates, let me just take the best available rate as an example. If we now go into our rate details and scroll down to the bottom and open up our add-ons, we have the option to search for our add-on. So if I now search, for example, for my, oh no, we made the webinar add-on a reservation one. But for example, bike, you're able to see that those other options move away, and I just see the ones that are relating to the search that I've put in. So the next topic, this enhancement is specifically for the remote lock integration. It is now possible to have the room PIN delivered to a guest email via the kiosk. If you have this integration, the following steps need to be taken to have this set up correctly. So the first thing that you'll do is in the settings, which is where we are now, you're going to go to rooms, and then from rooms, you'll go to room key delivery. And in here, you'll set all options to PIN. So for guest mobility PIN, the PMS check-in PIN, and then here for the station or the kiosk, station is the old name, we'll say deliver PIN code for room via email. We'll save those changes. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to our kiosk here in the settings. We'll move into general. And in general, we'll scroll a little bit to the bottom. And here under key creation method, you're going to click on remote lock PIN and save your changes at the end, of course. Now we've also added for this specific integration 4 new language tags that I'll show you. Once we go into our languages, we'll open up any language that you want to make the change to, and we use the purple pencil here on the right-hand side. If I now search for PIN, you'll see these 4 language tags. These are the new ones, and I've put some text in there so you know which one is which. So this send to email header, this is that we have sent the PIN code. This language tag is to have the option to update your email address. So you'll either use the one on file or a new one. No room PIN made is the one that it says, hey, we're not able to send the PIN to that email address. And then this one will be something along the lines of please retry or talk to an agent. Once you've set them up and once you've set up the options under the room key delivery, make sure that you test this entire process as well so that everything during this flow says exactly what you want it to say. Then the last step is actually the email itself. So under guest mobility, we have our dynamic email templates. And here, what you'll want to do, the first thing is under key delivery comment here on the right-hand side, you want to make sure that you have room pin text in here. So you'll save this way. And then under text key delivery email, you'll say something along the lines of, this is your email, or this is your room number. Of course, you'll have to change the text here to make sure that it says, please find your PIN code below in this email. And then when the guest checks in via the kiosk, that PIN code will show there. Another item for the kiosk is, let me move back to my kiosk screen. The guest info screen now doesn't display at the end anymore of the reservation flow, but what you're able to see if I search for my reservation is we have our reservation details here, and then the next screen is collecting the guest information. So that is where this displays now. And if we were to continue, then it goes into the terms and conditions. So that is now the flow. We collect the guest info before the T&Cs. If the info already exists, such as you saw just now, but let me just go back so that we can have a look at that screen. You can see that if the info exists, it'll already be automatically filled in, and then the customer can just click on save and continue. The next topic is relating to allowances. When an allowance add-on is part of a reservation, the count now displays correctly on the stay card as well as on the guest bill. So if I go to one of my reservations, let me take this one, and we add a allowance add-on on here. I have that already set up in this property. So let's see, we have our allowance tab already even. So I can say, okay, €40 spa allowance. If I now add this, and I go back to my stay card, we want to make sure this reservation is of course for 2 nights so that we can display that there's the 2 nights item. So now we can see here that this displays, over here, the allowance for 2 nights, that this is now correct. And as well on our bill and charges, if I go to my packages, you can now see that the spa allowance shows a quantity of 2. All right. Continuing, similarly to the group notes functionality, allotments now have the option to post notes on reservations. So if I go into my menu, into groups, and then in this case, manage allotment, because I already have an allotment ready for you, I go into my specific allotment. If we post a note, so let's say webinar allotment notes, and I post this to all allotment members, same as in the group functionality, and I post, you'll see that it says posted to allotment members. If I go to my reservations and I open up my reservation by going to the stay card, I can now see under the notes that from the allotment, my note has been posted. If I go back to my notes and I decide to make a change, as long as it's posted to all allotment members, if I again go to my reservation, you'll see on the stay card that change now also displays on the note over here. If I decide on the notes itself to make this not available for allotment members, but just on the group itself, I can now see that if I go to my reservation, that this note is now not there anymore. The last item that I want to show you for or 2 items still actually to note, is that any of the changes that you make will be displayed in the activity log. Always my favorite part of the system. You'll be exactly able to see who has done what when for these notes changes. And the last option, or the last possibility that I want to show you here, is once I remove the reservation from the allotment, so by going into the allotment here on the right hand side, oh, the button of the webinar is just in the way. Let me just move that. There we go. If I open up the screen and I detach, I can create this reservation as normal. And now you'll be able to see that once I am on the reservation itself, the note of the allotment has disappeared. In 5.72, we've also made an adjustment or an additional part of the deposit functionality again, which is that if obviously the deposit functionality is enabled for your property, it is now possible to generate an invoice with the company address on there. So going back to my, that's what I thought. Going back to my deposit invoice functionality property. If I have a reservation that has a company associated with it, such as this one, here we can see on the right-hand side, when I click on the company, we have hotel automation attached. If I go to the bill and charges, the first thing that I want to do is I want to, on bill number 1, click on use company address. That is the first thing that you'll want to do. Then you'll go to your deposit. I've played around with this one a little bit already, so it looks a little bit different, but this would normally be invoice number, deposit invoice number 1. When I then make the payment, if I go to my invoice, you'll now be able to see that my invoice on the top left has my company address on there. But you'll have to make sure that you click on use company address before you post the payment, otherwise it doesn't work. If that checkbox is unchecked when you're voiding the bill, the void deposit invoice will use the primary guest details as well. So you want to make sure that either you leave that toggle on to be able to use the company address, or you leave it off. All right. Then on our API page, or on our API specs webpage, the changes to the APIs and webhooks is now specified. So here you'll be able to see that we have either a change to the API or new API that is made a little bit more clear for our partners over here. And then the last item, which you'll also be able to see in this list already over here, is this one, which is that we've added brand info to the get hotels and get hotels ID in our API calls. Those were all the items that I wanted to cover today. I think we'll go through the questions now, right, Erin?
Yep, awesome. Thank you. And I'd now like to turn over the floor for questions. Remember, you can submit questions through the question box in the middle of the control panel. So it looks like the first question is from Barbara. Is it possible to use the remote lock send pin via this mobile check-in as well, or only with the kiosk?
I am not sure on the remote lock integration if that was already possible before. These were specifically for the kiosk, these changes that have been made. I think it was already available on Guest Mobility, but I'd have to check that just to be sure. I think it was.
Yeah. As far as I know, it's just for the kiosk right now. But all right, I'm not seeing any other questions right now. I'll give everyone a few seconds to enter those. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'll switch back to my screen. All right, so in this webinar, we explained the add-on date range functionality, discussed bundle with price add-on changes for reservation creation, stay cards, and groups, showed that you can now see the add-on price from the add-on section of a rate, showed that you can now search for add-ons within the add-on section of a rate, discussed the display of room type names on the group room block details tab, demonstrated how to scroll through selected rates from the rate manager, highlighted the addition of group reservation notes on the arrival report, departure report, and in-house guest report, discussed allotment shared notes, demonstrated allowance count on the stay card and guest bill, demonstrated the correct display of nationality and country fields via Stayntouch guest mobility and guest kiosk, illustrated that guest details now display after reservation details during the Stayntouch guest kiosk check-in, illustrated that GUO settings have been moved to Settings Integrations BI, discussed updates to the Remote Lock IDS G3 and TravelClick iHotelier integrations, covered new API integrations with Stayntouch PMS, discussed updates to Stayntouch Connect APIs, highlighted Stayntouch IBE enhancements, and explained deposit invoice enhancements. With that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you so much for coming, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at erin.fisher@stayntouch.com. Thanks again.